Are you dealing with negative or unwanted circumstances that you don't know what to do about? Perhaps you want something really badly, but right now, based on how things are, it feels like an impossible desire. In this video, I'm going to give you the exact steps to turn absolutely any situation around and fast. This can work in 24 hours. Hello, my beautiful superheroes. Welcome back to my channel, the place where we make the impossible possible. If you're new here, hi. I'm Scarlet Grace, I'm a manifestation coach, and I help people break through their limitations and manifest their heart's desires. In this video, I'm going to share with you a success story that comes straight from Neville Goddard that will demonstrate how you can turn any situation around and very, very fast. I'm going to share the story with you, and then I'm going to analyze what exactly he did to have those results so that you can do the same in your own life and turn any situation you want around very easily and very fast. And then I'm going to share a couple of success stories I had using the exact same method so that you can have some examples of how to use it in your own life. But before we jump into this, if you want to learn how to manifest any desire fast with the law of assumption and Neville Goddard's teachings, then start now by hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you won't miss any video that could change your life. I also have several self-study courses to help you manifest, including a 21-day course on how to manifest your specific person. And if you need some extra help or my personal advice for your situation, coaching is now open. There's currently 2 coaching options available. One is for live coaching and the other is for recorded coaching. You can find the links for all of those things in the description below. Are you currently faced with an impossible problem? Did you maybe receive bad news? Or you heard something that was not what you wanted to hear and now you feel that what you want to manifest cannot happen, that all the circumstances are against you? When this kind of thing happens, we are wired to try to figure out the solution with logic. So we keep going over and over the problem, trying to figure out how to turn things around. And it feels impossible. But that's not true. There are no impossible situations because everything that manifests in your physical reality got created from you. It got created through your imagination and through your subconscious beliefs. So if there is a situation in your reality right now that feels impossible, that feels unwanted, that feels bad, you can change it. You have the absolute power to change it because you have the absolute power over what shows up in your reality. Change what you focus on, change what you imagine, and your physical circumstances will automatically change. And that change can happen very, very fast, even in 24 hours. This is exactly what Neville did when faced with a situation that felt impossible. Here's how he describes it in his own words. This is from his book, Seed Time and Harvest. In January of 1946, I took my wife and little daughter to Barbados in the British West Indies for a holiday. Not knowing there were any difficulties in getting a return passage, I had not booked hours before leaving New York. Upon our arrival in Barbados, I discovered that there were only 2 ships serving the islands, one from Boston and one from New York. I was told there was no available space on either ship before September. As I had commitments in New York for the first week in May, I put my name on the long waiting list for the April sailing. A few days later, the ship from New York was anchored in the harbor. I observed it very carefully and decided that this was the ship we should take. I returned to my hotel and determined on an interaction that would be mine were we actually sailing on that ship. I settled down in an easy chair in my bedroom to lose myself in this imaginative action. In Barbados, we take a motor launch or rowboat out into the deep harbor when we embark on a large steamer. I knew I must catch the feeling that we were sailing on that ship. I chose the interaction of stepping from the tender and climbing up the gangplank of the steamer. The first time I tried, my attention wandered after I had reached the top of the gangplank. I brought myself back down and tried again and again. I do not recall how many times I carried out this action in my imagination until I reached the deck and looked back at the port with a feeling of sweet sadness at departing. I was happy to be returning to my home in New York, but nostalgic in saying goodbye to the lovely island and her family and friends. I do recall that in one of my many attempts at walking up the gangplank in the feeling that I was sailing, I fell asleep. After I awoke, I went about the usual social activities of the day and evening. The following morning, I received a call from the steamship company requesting me to come down to their office and pick up our tickets for the April sailing. I was curious to know why Barbados had been chosen to receive the cancellation and why I, at the end of the long waiting list, was to have the reservation, but all the agent could tell me was that a cable had been received that morning from New York offering passage for 3. I was not the first the agent had called, but for reasons she could not explain, those she had called said that now they found it inconvenient to sail in April. We sailed on April the 20th and arrived in New York on the morning of May the 1st. So to summarize what he did, he created a small scene that would imply that he's sailing to New York, that tickets were already found, and he played this scene over and over until he felt that this was truly happening, and at some point he fell asleep. He woke up, he continued with the rest of his day. 24 hours later, he gets a phone call that says, "Come pick up the tickets for you and your family." And that was weird because there was a super long waiting line. So he asked what happened here, how did we end up with the tickets? And they told him that we don't know exactly, but we got a message from New York saying that we should offer passage to 3 more people. And we called everybody else that was before you on the waiting list, but for some reason, nobody actually wanted to sail. Everybody said that, oh, now it's not convenient for me to be on that ship. So we called everyone until we reached you, and if you want the tickets, they're yours. And Neville and his family left on that ship for New York in April, and he was back on May 1st. Now let's get back to exactly what Neville did to turn this situation around in 24 hours. And this is very important for a lot of you that feel discouraged when you don't do things perfectly. Here's what he says. He says he imagined that he was on the boat and boarding the steamship and walking the gangplank. And then after he did that, he basically got distracted. And that's what happens to many of you. You start playing your imaginal scene and then you get distracted and you feel that you're not doing it right, that you failed. But that's not the point. That's why you have to play it over and over until it impresses in your subconscious mind. The first time may not be perfect. The second time may not be perfect. The 20th time may not be perfect. It wasn't for Neville, and he did this for a living. He kept playing the scene over and over until it was perfect, until he fully felt that it was real. And he doesn't even remember how many times he played the scene in his mind. He remembers that he fell asleep and then woke up and went about the rest of the day. So we have 2 keys of successful manifesting right here. The first key is, don't worry if the scene that you play in your mind isn't perfect. Don't worry if you get distracted. Just bring yourself back and play the scene over and over and over. Every time you get distracted, every time your attention wanders, bring it back, play the scene again. And the second key is, notice what he does when he wakes up. He goes about his day. He doesn't sit there feeling sorry for himself because he cannot sail back in April. He doesn't complain. He doesn't try to analyze the problem. He doesn't try to find physical solutions. He just goes about his day. So if you want your desire to manifest, you imagine and then either you drop it or you leave from the solution. You leave feeling grateful that it is already resolved. You don't try to figure it out anymore. It's already figured out. You don't have to do that. It happens by itself if you imagine the scene and you play it in your mind over and over. Anything that needs to happen in the physical world for circumstances to shift and change, it will happen automatically. You don't have to figure it out. I first heard this story many years ago when I was new to Neville, and it so happened that around that time I wanted to have a small medical procedure, a small dental procedure to be specific. And I needed to have that procedure as soon as possible, not because it was an emergency, but because it needed to be done and allowed time to heal so that I could do something else that I wanted in September, and this was the summer. So I go to this dentist and he basically tells me that we could do that, but first of all, it's going to be 2 separate procedures. You need to have one, then it needs time to heal, and then we need to do the second, and then after that heals, then you're going to be able to do the thing that you wanted to do all along. So that suddenly turned into a 4-month ordeal and 2 separate procedures. And the second thing he tells me is we're fully booked for 3 months, and then we're going to close for a month because we want to renovate the practice. So you can only have the first procedure 4 months from now. And I really didn't like that because 4 months later, I had several obligations and I didn't have the time to have any procedure done and be home and allow it to heal. I needed to be fully up and functional, and I couldn't be doing that at that time. I needed to do it during the summer when I didn't have as many business obligations. So I decided to try what Neville suggested here because, again, in my case, just like in Neville's, there was a long waiting list of people in case there is a cancellation. And it looked hopeless. I used the same method, and because it was around the time of my birthday, when I was having this discussion, the scene I actually chose was telling a friend of mine that, hey, it's a pity I cannot celebrate my birthday the way I had planned this year because I had that procedure, because that would imply that I would be healing the week that was my birthday, which was about a week after the doctor told me that, hey, you can't have this procedure for another 4 months because we're fully booked. That would be the week. So I played this scene in my mind over and over, and I did it for 2 days, and to be honest, I didn't actually believe that it was going to manifest. What happened was, on day 3, they actually called me and said, hey, we have a cancellation. Are you available to have the procedure now? And I asked them, weren't many people on the waiting list? And I got told, yeah, but it's the summer, and it turns out all the people on the waiting list are currently on vacation, so they can't come. So if you want to come in, you can come in next week. And they actually scheduled my procedure on the day of my birthday, just like I imagined it in the scene. Now, after I had the procedure, a week later, when I went to the dentist so that he can check on how I'm healing, he told me, hey, it looks like you heal faster than the average person. That's interesting. And for some reason, when he said that, that got me thinking that, hey, what if I didn't actually need to have the second procedure because the thing I needed the procedure for healed by itself? Wouldn't that be interesting? So I decided, just to check if it was going to work, to visualize during the month until I was supposed to go back so that we can book the second procedure, to imagine him telling me that, hey, you don't need the procedure. It looks like the problem fixed itself. So you can go ahead and do whatever you wanted to do all along that you had the procedures for. And again, I didn't think anything would come out of it, but I thought, why not experiment? Let's see what comes out of it. Maybe nothing, but maybe it will manifest. Who knows? So I go back a month later and he tells me, that's interesting. That's actually very rare. But the thing you needed the procedure for, it's fixed. You don't need the procedure for that anymore. It just healed itself. It happens. It's rare, but it happens. I hadn't encountered it in a patient before, but I guess there's a first time for everything, right? And I'm like, oh wow, that actually manifested. Another example of using this technique in a situation more similar to Neville's is a couple months ago, I wanted to visit a neighboring city where I have friends because there was a festival going on. But I couldn't stay at my friend's place because they were having other people over. They had other guests. So I needed to find a hotel room or an Airbnb. Because I was busy though, I kept putting off booking a hotel room or an Airbnb. And by the time I decided to do that, there was nothing available. And I mean absolutely nothing in a 40-mile radius around that city. Nothing at all. And I kept checking every day thinking maybe somebody will cancel, but nothing. So I went to bed at night and I started imagining that I was in that city. I was in a specific bar where I go with my friends when I visit. And there were posters about that festival and everything, meaning it was happening around that time. And we were discussing how amazing that festival was this year compared to the previous years. And I kept imagining that scene and playing it over and over in my mind, and I fell asleep imagining this. The next morning, I was at the hair salon when I decided to check for hotel rooms again. I check and there's no hotel rooms once again. But I check for an Airbnb and miraculously there's a single one suddenly listed that wasn't there before. And I rushed to book it, and long story short, I actually went on my trip and had a great time and everything. And when I was to give the keys back to the guy who had the Airbnb, he offered to drive me to the train station, and he told me that he doesn't usually list this apartment because that's where he actually lives. He only does it if he's going to be away for the holidays himself so that it doesn't sit there empty. And he wasn't supposed to list it around this time of year. But his brother called and asked him to pull a few night shifts at the restaurant that he has. And this is not the guy's normal job. He just went to help his brother, but he told me that because it closes very late and his parents' place is nearby, he usually stays at his parents' place so that he doesn't have to drive all the way to the other end of the city. And that's why he listed it, because he wouldn't be staying there for the only 2 days I wanted to be in town. So just like Neville, I didn't have to figure out anything. I didn't have to take any specific physical action. I just imagined that I went on my trip as planned. And the only physical action I took is I suddenly got inspired to check the page and see if something has become available all of a sudden. At the exact second, something had become available so that I could book it before everybody else. But it wasn't something I planned. It was completely spontaneous. It just manifested. In the first story, it took me 3 days. In the second story, it took me roughly 9 hours for things to turn around. Now, I cannot guarantee you that if you use this method, things will change within an hour or within 24 hours or within 3 days specifically. But as you can see, it doesn't take months or years to turn things around. So use this, and you will see that it works for you too, and it can create miracles where you thought a situation was impossible before. And come back and share your results in the comment. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because I put out new videos every Sunday to help you manifest an amazing life.